time.
It was really the limit.
Welcome in to our new podcast, the Serbian Sports Podcast, TSSP.
Let's go!
I love it. It has a great ring to it. Excited to have you guys on here today. And I want to start here. We haven't talked. I purposely haven't talked to you guys about this because I hate. No, I'm just kidding. Because I wanted to just have a conversation on this show about your guys' amazing journey to Serbia. First of all, I got to tell everyone that we have our presenting sponsor, Breckenridge Brewery. They've got a hootenanny. I got a hootenanny.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man. What, from one foreign language to another?
Yes. I actually Googled what a hootenanny is. I was actually surprised. Has to involve music. I just thought party.
No, I would have guessed it involved live music.
I don't know. Can you have a party without music?
Oh, man, that would
My mom, actually, when I was in high school, said, she was like, did you have a party at the house this week? And I was like, no. And I was like, well, what's your definition of party? She's like, any more than 3 people all listening to music together. And I was like, wow, that's a really light description. In that case, yes, I did have a party.
I've had a party every day of my life.
He said, actually, then in that case, it was a hootenanny.
Yes, it was a hootenanny. So they've got that coming up. Check out all of the great events they have coming up on the Breck Brew website. They have a sweet little concert venue in the back there. So go check out Breckenridge Brewery. Of course, they're our favorite beer. So use the Breck Brew locator to find out where you can find some Breck Brews near you. But gentlemen, the Sons of Serbia, they're back.
Can you believe it?
Sons of Serbia sounds good. I like it.
I feel like it's disrespectful on a lot of levels, but I'm willing to absorb that mantle. I think it's right.
Was that something you had to think about there? Is okay, all we ever do is make jokes and do bits. We maybe should try to make sure we don't disrespect anyone.
Not once.
The fan vote. It was
we knew not to.
Okay, once.
So there you go. It's one of those things. It's we just vote goes around and tries to make people look stupid.
Right.
Maybe that doesn't translate well.
It wasn't needed, but you're right. I didn't really think of it, but that was one thing we.
I did. I mean, you when you're in somebody else's house, you take your shoes off. You know what I mean? It was we were drinking heavily. We were, being exuberant. We were enjoying life, but it was also, at least in my mind, I was we're here as guests. Yes, we're here as ambassadors. Sure. We're here as we're here to highlight the great things about Serbia that you don't hear about typically. So I try to be on my P's and Q's a little bit.
I feel like there's 2 ways it could have gone, which is you guys become Serbian superstars. That's the way it went. Or it was Eric's
locked
in jail. Vote disappeared.
Oh,
we've everybody hates us. We're just trying to send us home.
Yeah, America, if you think we didn't have a pep talk, a breaking down of how the trip should go before we went, that included the concept of being locked up abroad. We did have that conversation of decorum and
the Brittany Griner thing was happening right before we were leaving. So it was hey, man.
Well, that's kind of a good segue back to before you guys left. Why did you want to do this? Obviously, Nikola Jokic is the center of this, but it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah. Do you want to take first stab at this one?
Well, I mean, listen, we're talking about, it's not only Nikola Jokic, but Nikola Jokic to us represents an opening to a world in which we've never really considered. And there's a lot of parts of the world that the world is quite large. And Serbia is a place that I grew up, I was God, I never even thought about Serbia when I was a kid. And then I was oh, right, because it didn't really exist. Although it did, but it was Yugoslavia. And then it was okay, the psychology of Nikola Jokic is so unique. Is there something more to where he comes from? The psychology of the people at large, for me anyway, it's just I want to know everything that I can about Nikola Jokic. And then that opens up to, okay, then we meet guys like Miroslav. Then we meet guys like Milan. Then we meet guys just more and more. And these people that are so important in our world and give us such interesting perspective on things that it was just, it's an onion that the more you peel, the more the story becomes... it just becomes bigger and bigger, and you just get more interested in what's going on, and it's an expanding of consciousness thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric nailed it, to be honest, because if you stick to sports with everything, if you it's the game starts, it ends, all right, let's talk about that, let's move on. It's limiting, that's only part of what you like about sports. Eventually there's these as he mentioned, like these layers to like, okay, well, it also teaches us about this thing, and then it teaches about that, and that's really what the Serbia trip was. Of course, it has to do with Nikola Jokic. Of course, like he's maybe to me the most interesting athlete to ever come through Denver. But it's more than that, because if it was just Jokic, it might be a little weird. Like we're almost like we're stalking him or something, you know. But it really is that a good part of our audience, and I think a much bigger part now after this trip, but a good part of our audience is from Serbia. So for the last 7 years, we're talking about Serbia way more than we would have ever guessed, not because of Jokic himself, but because of the fans that are following us have a different perspective and background. So
and they're sending in Rakia and stuff like that.
Rakia has become a part of DNVR Nuggets, like well before this trip. It's even more so afterwards. But yeah, so it was, all right, we have these fans out there. We have this world that has been like that we've been thrown into, whether we wanted to or not. We definitely wanted to, but whether we wanted to or not, we're like thrown into Serbia. So this was a hey, let's go over there. Let's actually make this a thing.
Yeah.
Let's actually tie Denver and Serbia together the way that they should be, and it was so much better than we could have expected.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't know what to expect, frankly. I mean, you know, again, like this is a part of the world that we know not that much about, frankly. I mean, like we know about it, but we don't know about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't quite know what to expect from how we would be received. Like, you know, are we operating a small bubble where there's a couple guys that know about the Nuggets, that they talk to us, they're friendly with us, kind of like our audience here, where, you know, being a Denver Nuggets fan is like largely solitary.
This is so perfect. This is so perfect.
So I don't know if like that is the case over there too. Like they're just people that are looking for any kind of community, so they latch onto us. But you know, like going over there and just feeling the hospitality and feeling just like the outpouring of support, and just like more than anything, like the desire to be seen is like what I got more than anything. It was like just a cry of like, guys, there's something so special about what is going on here just day to day, or like what this place is. Like this is a place that has existed for a very, very long time, and there's a huge story to be told here.
I think it's so DNVR, and it just happened to occur across the world.
Yes.
Like if we found out that there was a bunch of guys who worked in a mechanic shop that listened to one of our shows every day, and they were like, "Hey, come hang out, come down to the shop." We would go, we'd hang out, and we talk to them. And this was like that, just on a much larger scale. It was
scale.
like, "Hey, we all live in Serbia. You should come hang out." And it's like
exactly what it was.
Cool, let's do it.
I love what Eric was saying too, though, about the like when I got on the flight home, we went through Zurich, and I'm sitting next to the Swiss couple. And they're all excited. They're going to San Francisco, this or that. And I'm like, oh, I'm from Denver. And they're like,
yeah.
Like where? And it's like the same thing. I'm like, oh, we're going to Serbia. People are like, what part of Russia is that from? You know, like that. It was the same. Like Denver and Serbia are very similar in that way. But yet Denver kicks ass. Serbia kicks ass. That's part of what made this trip so hilarious, is you're like, yeah, this was awesome, and it's so lame that people don't know about it.
That is hilarious. That's true. That's true of everything. Yeah. Everything. Like any time that if you just think about Twitter, like blank Twitter, like Nuggets Twitter, Sixers Twitter, like all these bubbles that you find yourself falling into, and just like you don't even realize that people think about certain things. Like if you're an old person like I am and you see the MTV Music Awards come up, you're like, I haven't heard of a single one of these names, and this is like the biggest thing that there is in the world to a certain sect of people. It's just, I don't know, like the part of the growing and maturation part of life is just that your world gets bigger, and you start to understand that even though, I mean, the crazy thing is that the conclusions you come to is that everybody is ultimately the same, but there's just so many things that are happening at any point in time everywhere all over the world that nobody is thinking about, or everybody's thinking about. It's just like, it's just cool to step into something that is, you know, so deep and layered and interesting, and like you're finding out about it for the very first time, and people are so interested in telling you about it, and it just, I don't know, it was so cool.
This is a really interesting thing I realized while you guys were out there, and it goes into the fact that we're going to London for an NFL game this year, and I was thinking about how different that is. And it's what the NFL, I think, doesn't realize about wanting to become more international. Now, football is awesome, and so a lot of people have gravitated towards it. But the NFL really wants to become more international, and they are missing a gigantic piece that basketball has, which is actual international players succeeding in the sport. like there is no NFL star from London. And if they were, I think it would change things, because what happens is Serbian basketball fans, they actually like have ownership in a part of a thing that is the Nuggets. It's not like, there's this cool American sport.
Right.
It's like, oh no, that's ours too. And I think that was like just one thing I thought of. I was like, it's way different, because it's not like, there's this very American sport of basketball that we're like getting to play a small part in. It's like, no, this is ours too, and then you guys get to share it.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, to think about this in the NBA, from the NBA lens, and I think it applies to the NFL. Like, the NFL's going to London. I mean, that's like if you were to mark cities you're going to.
They're also going to Munich.
What's that?
Or Berlin, or
Berlin is, of course, but I mean, those are like at the top 5 of the list. If you just start going like, okay, the big cities of Europe, and the reason they do that is because the money's there. Like, this is what it all comes down to. There's a lot of money in London and these other places. The thing that's interesting is I've been thinking a lot about this. The game we watched was unbelievable. Serbia versus Greece. Yeah. A must-win game for both sides. The 2 best players in the world going head-to-head. Enormous arena. We were the only Denver media there, or Colorado media, American media. I could expand this. There wasn't anybody there from like ESPN or anything.
No NBA, no nothing.
Nothing. And
not even like the NBA or
nothing.
The ESPN national.
I'm telling you, nothing. There was just local media for this game that was so spectacular and was a spectacle itself. But I kept thinking part of the reason is that there's really just not a lot of money in Serbia relative to their countries. Like, if you were to do this international exchange, if it was like the Denver Nuggets, we're going to do a European exchange game. We go over there. They probably would also go to London.
Yeah,
they wouldn't go to Belgrade.
I think the Suns are going to London this year or something.
I'm sure of it. Yeah, it starts at the top and it trickles down.
Or the Bulls, maybe?
No, they're going to Paris. The Bulls are going to Paris.
Okay, there you go.
So in a weird way, like, part of the revelation of this trip, one of the cool things for me personally was just learning the backstory, the basketball history of Serbia. And like, Serbia is like the New York of basketball in Europe. It's like the heart of it. It's like
I mean, they're good, so it's not New York.
Well, okay. I just mean it's so true. The history, the culture,
myths.
But even so much when you talk about these other basketball nations, Spain or whatever, the people that have risen over in recent years, like Serbia has an influence on them. So they kind of are the genesis in a lot of ways. And it is funny in that one way to think about, like, that should be a story that's told, and it should be a thing that I think people recognize and celebrate. But yet we have this iconic game in Serbia, and nobody's there to cover it or tell any of the stories. Then you could have sent 12.
It's like a microcosm of.
Of course, you could have sent like 12 reporters from The Athletic, from ESPN, from Sports Illustrated. You could have sent them all. They all would have had a different story, and they all would have been great. That's how much content and storytelling there was from that game, and yet there was nobody.
Yeah,
weird.
Well,
it's so weird.
I mean, to me, this is at its fundamental core is an NBA issue. This is NBA being so focused on its weird tabloid description of itself, like worrying about Hoodie Mello and this guy and that guy, and the way that it thinks about basketball as it exists anywhere else in the world is like pretty dismissive. It's just like you like a player comes over, they're a Euro. That's it. They're a Euro draft and stash, and it's there's whatever. There's a guy coming over, he's a big guy, blah blah blah. But it's crazy.
But I think even the storytelling part, though, is what's important, is because I think over the last, it's funny because I'm going to start critiquing journalists when like people don't know, like the capital J journalists often will critique me for my style of coverage or this or that. But it's funny because in my opinion, one of my big critiques of journalism, especially in sports, is they like to tell the same stories. They like to see, and there's always like, there's always jokes about Hollywood, like how do you win an Oscar? Like you need the topical thing. Like what's the topical political issue? And now we have a story about that political issue.
Well, it reminds me of like the NBA or the NFL draft thing that everyone started pushing back on, which is like every time a player gets drafted, they're like, oh, here's his sob story.
Oh yeah, the sob story of a draft player is like we tell the same one every time. And I feel like journalism is that way. And part of why you don't go to Belgrade to cover Giannis versus Jokic in a must-win game is because that's a different story than what we're used to telling. It's just completely different. Yeah. And it's a great one, but it's like, how do I tie this back to the election?
Also, is this too basketball?
What's
like
that?
It's too much just about basketball.
Yes, this is the thing. It's like the NBA is concerned with its own sort of insular storylines versus like if you look at this is for you, Serbia, football. Like the Premier League, all of these leagues have a connection to one another, and there's a larger ecosystem at play, how the world is interacting with one another. We know about, how this nation plays versus this nation plays, and it all ladders up even into these club teams. Whereas the NBA, they're all club teams, and then you have the national interest that is sort of like, that's their thing. They're kind of figure that out. But it doesn't really have any connection to the NBA as far as the NBA is concerned.
Right.
And the NBA could, if they really want to make their game global, it would be so much more of these stories, not even stories, but just like the reality of the game being played differently elsewhere, the game being thought about differently elsewhere, how the influencers are coming in. And now that there's so many international players, like now it really behooves them to make those connections, and we'll see if they do it. I mean, but I just I saw like 3 Mellow posts this morning.
Of course, of the Rico Hines run. I saw people that were like, "Oh man, these runs are so incredible because there's all these stars going half speed in a pickup game." And I'm watching like Jokic and Giannis literally elbow each other in the solar plexus at full speed at these. I'm like, guys. I love Michael Porter. Him doing his triple crossover pull up for 3 on a guy that's like not playing defense.
Well, that's not. I need those mixtapes.
I need them too. But I saw comments that were like, "Oh man, these guys playing against each other, they're going to come in so ready." And I'm like, "No, they're not.
Yeah,
no, they're not. That's a pickup game."
The one you quoted this morning was like Jimmy Butler's shot is looking fire.
Oh, yeah,
like,
of course.
Every NBA player makes every open shot in an open gym.
But empty gym Twitter
it's so
is
great.
God.
It's so good. It's so good.
To me, that's like the number one thing I see in the NBA offseason.
Oh, it's
empty gym Twitter.
Hassan Whiteside doing turnaround jumpers and draining
best shape of my life Twitter and in the lab Twitter.
But if people are watching that, I mean, I know we probably have a lot of Nuggets people, but hopefully we have the TDSP, the Denver Sports Podcast, hopefully pulls in people from outside. If you're curious about some of the context for that game, the show we did before the game and after the game, it's up on our YouTube channel or obviously in podcast form on DNVR Nuggets, talked a lot about the context. And why I say this is ridiculous is that game, the storylines that you're talking about where it's about basketball, even if it's not directly, it's adjacent to, I'll give you a couple of them. Number 1, first time Serbia has played an important game in Serbia in years. First time Jokic is playing as the leader of the team. He's the greatest player in the world. He's 2-time MVP. First time he's the leader of the team. So many of the legends of Serbian basketball over the last 30 years were sitting courtside watching Jokic. So here's Jokic taking the mantle. You could imagine Russell Wilson, you got Peyton Manning and John Elway and Terrell David, everybody else like watching this first game in Denver. That's a storyline. Like, oh, look at this. The legends are out to see, can he fill the shoes that we have made? That's a storyline. The elimination factor of it all. There was all these great storylines to the game, and the fact that it's just like, well, we don't know how to tell that one. So I don't know. Game happened.
One shot got posted everywhere,
and then the NBA called it Eurobasket. They didn't even understand. It would be like I put this. The comparison would be like if you said Paulo Banchero Duke mixtape Pac-12 champs. You'd be you would be like, are you dumb?
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, no. So
yeah, no. Dude, that's the thing is that the NBA and they're the largest league in the world. They have the most the best players that all come together. It's the highest level competition, and just the weird way that they are just so dismissive towards anything that is not the NBA. It's just like, especially now coming from that perspective, looking back, you're like, oh my God, like this is so wild. Like now you understand like why everybody's so angry in our comments from time to time.
Do you remember LeBron? I was thinking about this the other day when he went back in 2014 to Cleveland, and whatever the musician is that's playing "I'm Coming Home," like real slow. These are the stories that we just love telling for whatever reason. Yep. And like at that time, even I remember being like, man, he is going home. This is kind of cool. There's something to it. But over time, we just tell that same type of story over and over again. And now you're just kind of like, now I look back at that and I'm like, oh God, LeBron, the sad piano, the crowd, like, oh, just, I'm sick of it, man. I'm sick of it.
We love like a player going, not even, so like I have this bit on the Broncos podcast where I'm like, I'm pro homecomings, but anti-returns. So like a guy was on a team, then left, and then comes back to that team. I'm like, this isn't what you wanted to be. Homecomings, nah, that's I'm in on. Like guy who is from like Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan gets drafted to the Lions. I'm like, I'm in on that.
The other thing here, the other aspect is that like when we look at our sports, which they will refer to over and over as club sports, where it says Denver on the front, it says Nuggets on the front, like to have like real national pride where everybody in the stands is like, they're not like a Denver fan or whatever, like they are Serbian. Like what's happening on the court is like not they're a fan of because they decided they like John Elway. It's like this is them, and like this is their view of themselves. This is the view of the rest of Europe, like how they sort of stack up, like the way that they sort of like absorb the pride that comes with being a champion, the way that they
but also the history, and this is a large part. This is why all those legends sitting courtside. I'm like, there's a great story to be told here,
right.
And that's the story I'm hoping to tell. I mean, we're working on the documentary, and a large part of it is about exactly what Eric is talking about, is tying our trip and the experience we had and the lessons we learned along the way to sort of the historical perspective of that national team and all the different players in it and big moments, because the greatest moments in Serbian basketball history happened with the national team. And there's really some fantastic stories to be told. But I was going to ask you this question.
Save it.
Okay, for the other side.
Good tease.
The question was, will you shut up?
Shout out DraftKings Sportsbook, where you can bet on qualifiers, Eurobasket, Pac-12 championship.
Hey, man, I'm betting on it.
Anything Jokic.
I hate that Serbia is the favorite. I hate it.
You do.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so mad. Oh, I hate it.
It's like betting on the Avs.
They were like the 6th best odds like a week ago, and then they go out and beat Greece and Turkey, and all of a sudden now they're the favorites. Can you believe that?
And now
I watched them play, so yeah, I'm not that surprised.
And now Jokic is only plus 900 to win MVP, and I'm like, he might do it again. He might just do it again, but we're not getting as much value.
One Sombor shuffle in the corner. Granted, it was the Sombor shuffle. Yeah. He hits one, and all of a sudden everyone's like, he's never losing again.
No, for me, it was just like, oh, he's like playing really good defense. Like that's the new thing. Yeah. That's his new thing. Every year he adds a new thing. This year it's going to be defense. And he was already good at defense, but now he's going to be elite at defense.
74 and 8?
He'll still, well, yes. A, yes. B, he'll still get no credit because the people who watch the NBA only see defense at the rim for a center.
Anyways, it's impressive for you guys to get me to talk this much about basketball when football is literally back.
It is back.
And if you want to bet on DraftKings Sportsbook on football, basketball, darts, cricket, anything, get over there and bet this week $5 on any any football game, not just college anymore. Any football
American
game.
football. I mean, please.
Yes, sorry, American football. All due respect.
All due respect.
You're gonna get $200 in free bets from our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's an awesome deal. You just got to use the code DNVR when you sign up. Of course, age and eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. And then, speaking of football being back, the Buffs are back on Friday. And Andre and Henry were talking about how they wanted to go to the game. And this was before I knew we had to deal with Game Time. I was like, oh, just use the Game Time app. Straight up. I was like, all you got to do is just come down, start tailgating, hang out. And then, hour or so before the game, pop on the Game Time app. You're going to get really, really cheap tickets. This is a perfect partnership for me personally because I procrastinate everything. And Game Time is one of the only places where you get rewarded for procrastinating. Like, the longer you wait, the cheaper your tickets are.
Dude, can you believe it's been this long? I mean, granted, sports didn't happen for a long time, but I cannot believe it's been this long since we had a ticket partner. Like, what else?
Know.
What are we?
What are we?
Who are we?
I gotta take my.
These are Game Time.
Game Time is sick.
Dude.
I've been using Game Time for years. It's a great, super user-friendly app. They give you like great views on there of whatever tickets you're getting. Sometimes they have these flash deals where they're just like, "Hey, you want a ticket in the first level? Just pay like $45 and it will give you somewhere on the first level." So great stuff. Go into the show notes on the YouTube description to get in on Game Time. You got to use that app. You got to use that link.
That link.
Or else you don't help us. So
you don't help us at all.
You don't help yourself.
You don't help you.
Well, help us and help yourself. All right.
Back to this. Okay. So I had a question because to set the stage, 19,100 people at this game, and it was an incredible crowd, like just a perfect crowd. We wouldn't get that, here. No frills. there was a no frills crowd. There wasn't a mascot. There wasn't a t-shirt cannon guy. There wasn't any of all that other stuff. And my thought was, it is a double-edged sword. Us talking about, man, the U.S. needs to bring media there. The NBA needs to embrace these events and they need to go there. But I kept thinking, like, there's a cushy middle where in the first years, whenever those things happen, where it's like you get the atmosphere and crowd and the honesty. I mean, it felt like such an honest event. It felt like a pure event. You know what I mean? Like it was a pure what sports are supposed to be, mixed with like once all the money starts coming and like Ramona Shelburne is courtside instead of like Bodiroga or something like so. So like my question was, do you think that one, if we cut off all frills to a basketball game here, no Rocky, no t-shirt cannon, no Jumbotron BS, do you think the crowd would be louder? Quiet, like they would actually ruin it?
I don't think it's like a fair parallel because that was a one-off event. It was a national team.
There was one Nuggets game every 5 years.
Yeah, they don't play 40 games in that stadium. It's not their their arena. It's like, you know, so there was a level of like if you went to like
novelty.
Yeah, I guess so. Like if you went to like an Olympic event for the U.S. playing, it would probably be the same level of no frills. There wouldn't be Buddy Bald Eagle or whatever.
There
like,
probably would.
We should note that Red Star plays at Alexander Nikolic Hall, and it holds 7,000 people, between 7,000 and 8,000 people. And I was thinking, like, Ball Arena held 8,000 people. That place would be popping.
Yeah.
That place would be so
that's
loud.
what the Coyotes are about to experience next year.
Well, Coors Event Center, even for the basketball
Eagles.
team in Boulder, like they when that place is full, it feels
So loud.
insane.
Yeah.
It's so loud.
Yeah, just like sound reverb. That's it. Like like when sporting events are really impactful is when you feel like you're part of an organism, everything working
That's what
together.
it was, man.
Like this especially, like everybody was moving in the same direction. There's no opposing
So
fans.
true.
Like this was like Serbia, and frankly, like Miroslav and everybody didn't expect the game to sell out because like, you know, it's been so long of a drought and they haven't played so long. They didn't really know what to expect themselves. Like, would the fans return? Would they be in full throat? And the answer was yes. The answer was yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know that we could replicate that in experience.
But what I mean is I wonder the relationship, and it's like chicken and egg almost, between the U.S. does the frills really, really, I don't want to say well because I don't really like them, but they do them really loudly. You know, just the Jumbotron and now it's the what's that 3-card money game that everybody plays. Like they do all that BS, so you're almost constantly in a state of like watching a show, and I just wonder if you took that away, would it just be dead silence, and that's why they're there? Or if you took them away, eventually crowds would be like, we know what to do during dead times. We're fine. Just leave us alone.
It's interesting. I mean, if you go to a Rapids game, everybody's singing along the whole time. Sometimes it feels like a little forced, frankly. But
it feels like they're cosplaying
a
Europe.
little,
you know what I mean?
Yes. So I don't really know the answer to that. But
just got Mitch is going to be so pissed at
Yeah,
us. I'm not trying to take away from him. It is cool. Like I love but I'm just saying it's the such tiny condensed version of what we saw at the Red Star football game, which was like everybody doing it. You know what I mean? Like
and I will say, like, Allie said the same thing when we left the Rapids game that we went to last summer. She's like, I love the singing, I love the chanting. I don't feel like it has to be every second of the game.
But the Red Star football game that we went to, everybody was doing the same, had their cheers and everything, and that everybody was doing, and they were all in motion. They were all again moving in the same direction. And I've told you about this. When I went, I felt that the energy was the same as it was. That was a playoff game for them. So that energy was very high. I don't know if it's like that for every single one of their matches, but that felt, I mean, like a Broncos playoff game has the same level of intensity without question. But we don't, like when I went to the Super Bowl, I told you this, and I was walking to the stadium. We were going against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have a chant that they all say together, Seahawks, Seahawks. And we were in the subway, and everyone started doing that, and I was like, oh, man. we don't have a thing. We don't have a thing with it. Like everybody does to get. Yeah, that was my joke. Like incomplete. That's our response.
So
like
lame,
I was working on names for the new menu at the bar yesterday, and I was like, how do I get incomplete into something that I was like, oh, that doesn't work at all. I was like, the incomplete nachos. Like, and what are they missing? Cheese.
So true.
So like there's something to. I mean, the basketball game we went to was like, it wasn't entertainment. It was like duty. It was like,
yeah, for
it
sure.
was national.
For sure.
Like,
the crowd really did feel a part of the experience.
Yes. So I don't know. I think that there is something to the fact, like, when there's so many games, especially like we hear this all the time, like people wish there were fewer games in the NBA. They get like bored with it.
Right.
I can't personally imagine
Yeah,
that.
because we care about the basketball. That's what the
Yes.
thing that's so dumb is you get so used to the all other frills that you almost are like when you don't have them or something. You're like it's so lame. Basketball Twitter has a lot of lame things. People are gonna be so mad at me. I think Red Panda is kind of lame. Everybody loves Red Panda as this halftime act. I'm like, look, relative to other halftime acts, I'm like, whatever, but I can't.
Anger starts right here.
It starts right, and everybody's like, oh man, it's the best, this or that. I'm like, guys, she bounces and does the thing. It's cool. Like, it's cool. But like,
wow.
If this was at 16th Street and I was walking down, I wouldn't stop. I would just be like, you know what? Oh, look at that. That's crazy. I'm getting to my destination.
I think you're off on this one.
Well,
but I know what you're saying.
If Red Panda like rolled out into the middle of the Serbia-Greece game, would they've been like, this is great.
Yes.
I don't know.
She's so talented.
But I will say
she is talented. There's a lot of talented people. I don't want in my basketball game.
But during that game, they had a bunch of like half court shot stuff.
That's true.
They
That's
did.
true.
They
That
did have like.
halftime,
They just didn't. They don't have to do it 40 times.
Yeah, they don't have to do it every second.
It gets a little desperate.
It is so desperate. Like, oh, we have 10 seconds of quiet. Like, we need to fill that with 3-card money.
It's also just one of those things where like one person was like, "Oh, it'll be a funny bit if I'm really into Red Panda," and then everyone else just followed
actually
suit.
into it.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Okay, let's circle back to
people pissed if they turned red.
Woo! Let's circle back a little bit to the trip. Like, what did you expect the reception to be, and at what point did you realize like, oh, this is more than we expected?
I have an answer for this.
Go ahead.
I think I know where the trip turned, and it was in the best way. Like, I expected. Here's my biggest fear for everything we do. Eric, you guys can both attest to this. I always think nobody's going to show up. Yep. So it's like, hey, we're going to have a watch party for the playoff game 7. Like, but is anyone going to show up? Like,
to be fair, we've done some things where no one showed up.
We have done something. We've done a fair
very
amount.
Few.
Early
Very
on.
Very few, but nonetheless, it's just a thing. It drives me. My nervous personality makes me work harder. But so I didn't know. So I was worried about like, man, are we going to like meet like 10 people out there, or what have you? And then also the question of like, you know, how do you just like announce your presence or something? You know, that's a big part of your trip. And I know in my opinion,
I know it.
What is it?
Mile High City, baby.
Well, I think that was second. I actually think that was second. The first to me was when we went to Ambar, the restaurant, and it was the second day. So we arrive, we do a tour of the city. It was great, fantastic host Goran, and then we went out that night, and like we went out that night as if I've been to, you know, some other place. You travel your first night out,
right?
You don't know anything, nobody knows you, and you're just kind of lost in a city, and it was a lot of fun.
Get way more drunk than you think.
Way more drunk than you expected. We were at the Splavs at 4 in the morning. I was like, we need to get some good night rest, guys. Full day. We're out to 4 in the morning.
First
just
night of any trip. Always.
So true. And then like 2, 3 in the morning, and you're like, I'm already drunk enough. Do I need this last shot of Rakia? And then like 4 more shots of Rakia for some reason. But we got invited to this place, Ambar, a restaurant that does traditional Balkan food, and I going into it, I wasn't exactly sure if they were going to roll out the red carpet, you know, what it was going to be like. I just knew we were going to taste some foods. They rolled out the red carpet. It was an incredible experience.
They made us taste the red carpet.
They made the taste the red carpet. And I felt like that was when our Twitter started going viral. So like we had things that were catching on, of course, but I felt like that was like, I'm putting out tweets that are getting 1,000 likes and 2,500 retweets and stuff. And
I was here in the office just scrolling through the Nuggets feed, just reading the numbers. I was like, 677, 795, 1,024. Like,
and then we go immediately. We had a great time there, and we went immediately, and it just looked cool because it was cool. It was exactly what it looked like. This like great restaurant teaching us traditional.
We
food.
were basically the only people in there. It was open, but the power went out right. We got there, and it was like actually made it cooler. Yeah. Like it was like more moody, and then we were just in the corner, and everything was being explained to us. We had like a whole like wait staff that was like coming and bringing food and like
it felt like everyone had kind of realized that we were there at that moment. Like the night before, people that were really in the know knew, but after that it just felt like everyone. And then we start walking and everyone sees you. We go to the party and it gets even bigger, and it just from that moment on I just felt like everything we did became big, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest part for me was that like you could tell there was a deep appreciation from the people there that you guys cared enough to come see it. It's like,
yes.
Like it's easy to talk about like, oh, Nikola Jokic's hometown of Sombor, or like whatever.
Right.
And you can like try to tell stories through the lens of people who live there or have been there, and I'm sure like journalists are doing that all the time. But I could tell that people that lived in Serbia were like, wow, these guys cared enough to actually come experience it, and that felt like the driving kind of force of the entire trip.
I mean, for me, because I was just like there. I just I wasn't like focused on the tweets
Twitter,
and I wasn't necessarily looking at the numbers. I was
you were present.
I was present. I was just eating, and this is great, and this is like awesome, and I can't believe how hospitable. And I don't know if we're paying. I don't know what's happening. I'm just like, this is great. And then we walked, like the riverfront is like down, and just right up the hill is a big fortress, which is right in the middle of Belgrade, and it's like a very tactical fortress. It's like a really meaningful place to the whole region.
History of the region.
Yeah, it's been taken by lots of people many times. Anyway, so we walked up the hill, which, if you're going to make a fortress, you wouldn't make it easy to get to. So we had to like walk up around, so we got up to the top of the hill, and we're like, oh my God, it was hot. I was sweating more than I've ever sweat in my entire life, because we just ate a bunch of food. We just drank. Like, I was immediately sweating out rakia. Like, I was drunk already, and we were like we were kind of late. And like right as we showed up, like we hear like, hey guys,
hi guys,
Mile High City, baby. We're like, oh, we're home, man, we're home. Yeah,
Jovan right there.
Jovan, yeah. And then like,
I totally would have guessed that.
And then it was just on, and like then I showed up, and I was like, oh hey, and I'm just like embracing people, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm sweating on you, and they're like, we don't care. And then somebody gives me a Serbian jersey. Then they give us these shirts that say Serbia loves DNVR, and they're like slapping our hands, and like everybody just like wants to talk to you, and you want to talk to everybody, obviously. And it just like got like, you went into this bar that is in the middle of the fortress, and like there wasn't, and they were like, the weather was really bad. It had rained that day, and so they were saying that like the crowd there had cleared out. Normally it would be a lot busier because it's sort of in a touristy location, but nobody was there, so we had run the entire bar. And like the the 7 of us showed up, and like we didn't talk to each other the entire night. Like we just were in these little pods of just like guys around us, talking to us, telling us things that they, what they thought of us, what they thought of the show, how
and like meaningful gifts too is what makes it cool, because it's one thing to be like, hey, here's a thing, but it was like there was always a story to almost everything. Like, hey, I've been saving this for a year because I knew you were coming, and and you're like, wow, all right.
I drove for 200 kilometers to get this bottle of rakia that my grandmother made, and put it in this bottle, which was maybe water before, or Sprite or something, and then bring it to you. And then like I had every intention of, like, I had a backpack full of shirts we made that were going to be fundraisers to help us pay for the trip. I was like, all right, we're going to sell these.
We can't.
I'm like, I'm going to sell these. Like, what, what should the price be? But like by the end of the night, I was like, I just gave every shirt out. I'm like, I can't. Like,
yeah, man.
Right. They're giving you all these gifts. You can't be like,
I charge one.
Giving me another $31.99 for this.
Not even the logic of it like that. It was more just like the vibe. Like the vibes were great from the start, the moment we touched down. But it was that day, the dinner, and then the meetup that were just like, oh, this is going to be perfect. Yeah. Like, this is going to be cool. And and it was like stress, like no stress from that point on. It's like, hey, the experience is the story. There's nothing else that needs to happen.
Yeah, it was amazing. I charged one person, Lycos, for a T-shirt. And then I gave him his money back.
Lycos stole Dev's shirt, though. Did you see that?
Yeah. Dev got his shirt. Well, the funny thing was about me giving everybody's shirt is that I also took Dev's shirt that he had paid for from DNVR, and I took it out of a bag that had Duvalier Johnson written on it because it was being ready to ship. I'm like, oh, I'll just give it to him. I gave that shirt away. Oh. Dev did not get a shirt.
He never will.
Nope. That's too bad for Dev.
Dev's a good segue. If I could, so I love you guys, but if I could have chosen any person to be like the favorite,
the main character,
yes, the main character, I absolutely would have chosen Dev.
You agreed with Serbia. You agreed with the entire nation state of Serbia. They also wanted Dev to be the main character. He was great. One of the cool things about this trip, man, is I honestly feel like everybody did their job at the best level. Like, it was a weird dream team-esque like coming together where everybody just was like, oh wow, everybody's cooking. And it was awesome. And Dev was in his bag, and the people really took to him, man.
It's the best. That's the best.
It's honestly hard to explain Dev's popularity. because people like loved us, but they would cast us to the side immediately. They'd be like, DNVR, I'm so excited you're here. Dev. Like it was like that. It's like, oh, our part's done. Like we just
and like Dev was just like is so uniquely I don't know, positioned to accept that love.
Well, of course.
Like he's like, I don't know, he's just great at that. Like he's Dev.
Yeah, he was the character the entire time. It was great, man. It was really hilarious.
Well, and I think obviously whoever's idea, I'm assuming Brendan, to come up with Dev likes or Dev doesn't like.
Just started doing those things right off the bat, and yeah, like this is the thing I don't think people stateside will recognize is that there were other, like, I don't want to say famous people, but somewhat famous, like well-known people that were in on Dev likes. Like they would come in for the football game and they'd be like, hey, where's Dev? Like, Dev likes, man. I've been following Dev likes. That's the greatest thing ever.
Great.
Like, and then I would just think it's a guy, and you're like, oh yeah, he's over here, this, that. And then someone would be like, do you know who that is? I'm like, no. They're like, he's also famous.
That's the thing. Know? That's the larger thing. Like all of these things that exist that are big that you don't even know about. Yep. You go over and you learn it. You're like, oh man, that's big. I should know about that.
My number got out. You know, like I gave it to a handful of people, and next thing you know, I'm getting texts from everybody. There were two guys named Marco texted me at the exact same time, and I didn't realize they were different people.
That's the thing, man. Everyone in Serbia is named Marco or Milan.
There's like 4 or 5 names.
Or surgeon.
But but one Marco who was all the people we met were fantastic. One guy writes me and he's like, hey, it's Marco. Like, can we get a time? And we were walking to meet Marco. And I'm like, bro, we're in 10 minutes. We're on our way over. And he's like, where? And I'm like, bro, come on, man. Like, what the heck? And then we are talking, and I realized, I'm like, bro, it's the wrong Marco. I was like, we're meeting a Marco. I thought that was you. Like, you're a different Marco. Let's put a different time together.
A lot of Marcos.
A lot of Marcos.
That's awesome. But I feel like the Dev likes thing kind of goes into you saying everyone is in their bag. Like, that's prime vote to just like make a thing out of thin air.
Vote was in his bag the whole trip, man. It was funny. Everybody had different people that they liked, for the most part throughout the trip, and it was fun. And the cool thing about Serbians, they'll tell you. We got a lot of, you're not my favorite. Eric's my favorite. Like, okay.
Yeah, the Serbians like me. I'll say that. They all do.
An American person did that to me at the Broncos tailgate.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, so this is sick. Where's Zach? And I was like, oh, he pops by. And then Zach shows up later, and he's like, hey, yeah, like I was telling RK, you're my favorite. I was like, all right, cool.
Cool story, bro.
I want to give a shout out to Manscaped. If you are in Serbia or anywhere else,
shout out to the crop preserver.
That's what I was gonna say.
Shout out to the crop preserver.
Sweating profusely. The crop preserver and the crop reviver, both very necessary things to have.
Oh my!
If you're like walking around big cities, you got to have some protection, you know?
Yes.
Some protection from the heat and the sweat and all that
Let's
stuff.
Be proactive, not just defensive.
Exactly. So check out our friends over at Manscaped. Use the code DNVR20 to get 20% off, plus free shipping. And not only do they have, the lawnmower and all their great products, but they have the crop preserver.
They do. And I will say that while most of me was wilting, my crops were preserved.
And then finally, Ivaka. I'm going to let you guys cook on this one.
People I do think know this, but Ivaka made this trip possible. Like, this trip was on life support. I mean, we've been talking it up all year, and it was on life support because we just needed more money to be able to go.
As you can imagine, it's really expensive to send
7
guys 5,000 miles away.
And I'll tell you what, one note I got from somebody whose opinion I respect a lot was like, you guys could have sent a skeleton crew, but you didn't. You sent the whole thing, and like that was so meaningful. And look, it costs a lot of money, but it also costs a lot of time. Like, Eric, very valuable member of the company. Like, RG, very valuable member of the company. Like, to take them off the table, essentially. I know you still worked. I know you still did. But to take them off from being, like, at their desk and doing things for that long, as well as all of us, was a lot. But
so
Ivaka TV.
Credit to those of us who were here for picking up the slack.
Had to do double work while we were just drunk. But Ivaka TV came through, man, and they love. I mean, Ivaka TV. The thing I will say about them is they really, really, really like DNVR,
and they really get it.
And they get it.
Getting it is so important.
And it's funny because you talk to some people and they're like, "Oh, I want to see this. I want to see the numbers." Ivaka was like, "Dude, that trip sounds awesome. You guys want to make a documentary?" here's the money. We'll premiere it, and our documentary now is going to be on Ivaca TV. So I say that to say that not only are they like, fully in bed with us at DNVR, and like we're starting to make content and do projects. They do appreciate that. Not only that, but like they also see DNVR for what it is, and they're like, this is a thing that's gonna, we believe in. We want the documentary. It's going to be on Ivaca. So sign up. If you're like on the fence about it, you want to watch Nuggets Avs this year, you don't want to have to do the pirate thing, and you're always up 2 minutes behind Twitter, and it sucks. Get Ivaca TV. You can watch the games live. You can record the games, but also you're going to get the first look at the documentary that we're making. And I tell you, the documentary is going to be the single. I know this for a fact. The single greatest thing I've ever done.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and society has moved on from the need for Comcast, for a large conglomerate that will give you many channels that you will never watch, but you pay for without realizing it in very meaningful ways. Like you can get Ivaca TV to be able to actually watch the thing you care about, which is sports.
Yep.
Right.
You want to watch sports, and you want to watch, then you can get streaming services to supplement or supplement it. Like for Comcast, like I'm so out on Comcast. It is. I mean, I was, and now it's done.
I was going to say the one big thing that we have in common with Ivaca is caring about Denver sports fans.
Totally.
Yes.
That's where we met, and everything spins off of that. All right, couple of rapid fires. If every day you got a score between 1 and 10 for how drunk you were, then you averaged out the scores at the end of the trip, who had the highest score?
Oh, who had the highest? Probably vote. I mean,
Let's
easily
go.
vote, man.
I challenge you to look through the video content that was created and find moments where he doesn't have a drink in his hand. Podcasts.
I will say though,
My guy knows how to enjoy
I think
himself.
Eric's the only member that scored a perfect 10 one night. So he did have the single game high, but he did not have the highest average.
Dude, that night, the night that he's talking about, we went out or the first night with the meetup.
it was the second night. Yeah, second night.
The meetup where, we drank an unbelievable amount of rakia. I don't know if you know about rakia. It is pure alcohol, essentially. It's not like it's not
a spirit.
Like, it's a spirit, but in the spirit of getting very drunk. It's like so.
Everclear.
Yeah, in the spirit of Everclear. Leaving the meetup. First off, like a group of us broke off. We're like, all right, we got to get out of here.
This group's too drunk and too tired. You're going this way, but this group is going out to have fun.
We break off. We're like following the path back. We got to go. We're like walking around, and then we were walking for like 20 minutes. There's like 5 or 6 of us, and then we turn the corner and we're back where we started from.
Oh, no.
We made no progress of any kind.
When you're so tired and so drunk, and you like have just walked for 20 minutes with no progress, that's a low feeling.
It was a very low feeling, and then we actually got going in the right direction, and it had rained that day, as I mentioned, and we parked in a place that was a parking lot, in that it was a place that cars could stop, but it was dirt, and when dirt meets rain, dirt turns into mud, and I fell into the mud in such a way like to look back at like my shoes had to go into the washing machine. They were caked with mud in a way that was hard to recognize them. The inside of the car was it was not good. It was a bad state of affairs.
So wait, is this a situation where like the mud was slippery and legs went forward, or
Yes.
you stepped in the mud and your foot was stuck and you fell?
I wasn't there, but I was
I
told
went backwards.
I was told it was a long period in the mud. It wasn't like falling it back up. It was like a
thud, and then I just was like,
and then I was contemplated sleeping.
Yeah, then
there.
I was like, this is where I live now, in the mud.
So anyway, single game high, but I think highest average definitely vote.
Okay, you add up all the minutes that someone was late for something, and it creates like one sum. Who was the most late?
Come on, again, it's vote. Like this is the easiest thing there's in the world.
Vote
is a character, right?
No, vote this summer. Vote has found something in himself, which frankly terrifies me to my very core. I'm honestly scared for next
Summer
season. Vote. We're gonna get a lot of like late night with sunglasses on Vote, which it feels like
so
a character. Which feels like, well, you're not on the show.
Exactly. I just get to enjoy it.
But we've unlocked something, so stay tuned to see where it takes us.
Just like Nikola Jokic, he levels up every year.
He also, if you wanted to know, like most likely to routinely lose his wallet, it would be Vote.
Oh, yep.
Including once he left it. It's actually a funny story. He left it at Jokic's elementary school on the court. Like we drove back to the hotel room, and he's like, crap, I left it out on the court, which is something I can't conceive of doing.
No.
I walked by, I was like, no one forget their little man purse. Forgot his little man purse.
Yep. This is something that happens with Allie where I'm just like, she's looking for her wallet on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
yeah.
There's actually 3 places where my wallet could ever possibly
course.
be. In my back pocket, on the kitchen counter, or next to my bed.
There's
only 3 places.
I can't. Same with my wife and her phone. She can never find her phone. I'm always like, my phone's always on me.
Where did you put it?
I will say that every morning I wake up, it's a brand new day on Earth for me.
Yeah.
I don't know where things are.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
Every day is a brand new day. It's like the
routine.
movie Memento. But I bought a tile so I can find it, but I never lose it in public.
Yeah.
And Vote also more than one time was on a live show with no shoes. And didn't realize it until it was pointed out. And we were like, hey, man.
Vote was very present. He wasn't thinking about, important details or this, that. He was just vibing.
Yeah, he was Eastern vibing.
All right. I know the answer to this one, but I want to hear it. Most likely to be in their feelings, like in I love you guys way at 3 a.m.
Vote's going to win every single one of these, I feel.
Really?
No, I think Adam wins this one.
Yeah,
I think Adam wins this one.
I just love you guys.
The fellas.
The fellas. Yeah, the fellas, though. But
Who liked the food the most?
Oh, I would nominate myself here. I got a bad rep because I didn't like burek, and it was the first thing we had. But I literally loved every other meal we had.
We got set up with this burek.
We really did. It was a setup.
It was a setup,
Miroslav?
man.
What the hell, dude?
Again, like we showed up. I don't even
People
know
were
what
trying
time
to
it was.
deport Adam after his tweet that was like, I'm never eating that again.
And then
We got
people were like,
set
"Oh,
up,
you're worried
man.
about your weight." And I was like,
No, it was
not to gain
it
weight.
was so hot outside. Like hot. It was like I didn't understand that it gets hot there. Like it gets hot. It gets hot. And then we were served the hottest food I've ever been served on the hottest day, and it was hot oil and cheese, and
really was.
being washed down with thick yogurt. And we were like, we're not acclimated yet. This is too much. This is too much.
We dove into the deep end.
Yep.
Yeah, we dove into the deep end before we could swim.
All right. I have one here that said, well, it's actually not what they said, but Serbian McDonald's. Tell me about it.
He didn't even go.
I did go.
Oh, you did go.
I did go the last night because it was the only place that was open. Totally different, completely different restaurant.
Wow,
Not nearly as
that's
good
crazy.
as the U.S. Although significantly nicer. But you have to pay for ketchup. Very annoying. I didn't know that till I got my fries. Fries, by the way, the top fry in the world. McDonald's in Serbia. Curly fries from McDonald's in Serbia.
Curly fries.
Great curly fries. Unbelievable. You know how you get curly fries someplace? There's one curly and then the rest are like half moons?
Yep.
Nope. All curlies.
Just full on.
Just a full on thing of
pigtails.
curly.
You did have to pay for ketchup, and you got one packet.
Yeah.
It was tough. I got a Royale with cheese.
Royale
with cheese. I've been waiting my whole life to get a Royale with cheese, and it was not as good. It was not as it was not as it was good, but listen, the U.S. does some things right, and this is where McDonald's is from.
Fast
right?
food. We got fast food.
Like
down.
it's all lame things. I will say though, those meals were done we went to KFC once too, which was hilarious because I got a tostada that's actually a quesadilla at KFC. It's weird as hell. The weirdness of it was what was so cool.
KFC there slaps. It was so good.
Significantly better than KFC here.
So I can't even tell you. Ask Dev, dude. Dev was to say obsessed. Like if Dev would have the segment of Dev likes would have just been him going to KFC over and over and over.
As we know, Dev, first thing you do on vacation, Popeyes.
That's right. He does. That's right.
I'm telling you, it was there was something. It slapped. It slapped.
I just want to make the record straight. Both of those meals done out of convenience. We were en route to something, or it was the only thing we had. Every other meal we had though was a Serbian meal, and they were all fantastic. This is the thing: is we ate the same meal a lot. I can't even tell you all the names of it because it's basically barbecue, but it's different things.
Yeah, it is,
and it's like a top 5 meal for me. I would eat that. If it was here, it would be like I don't know if I could eat it every week.
If you presented Adam a platter full of hamburgers, hot dogs,
that's what it
chicken,
is. But it's like
French
way
fries.
Better. Like look at this stuff that you have here. Like they're all. I mean, the fries just fill the plate. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and it's just like fillets of pork.
Oh
and
my god!
This is a chicken braided with bacon. I mean, it's just stuff where you're like, oh man, what's this food gonna be like? You're like, oh, it's just dope meat.
Yeah.
It's just great meat.
And I saw your tweet that you lost weight. I've only ever left North America once, and the same thing happened.
You lose weight, man.
And I've been seeing TikToks about this, and it's actually giving me anxiety. Like, everyone is like, yeah, I live in another country. I eat as much as I want, and I lose weight. I'm like, what are we doing here? We're living a terrible life.
That, and I will say, is that we walked a fucking lot every day. We walked a lot.
For sure.
Felt good to walk.
So, I mean, you compound that in, but then, you know, like, because like in bigger New York, people are not big. They're you know, they walk everywhere. That has being active has a lot to do.
I've seen some big ones.
Last question, and we'll end here. If this was a story, what was the moral of the story?
The moral of the story, huh? I mean, for me, the moral of the story, I kind of knew going into it, and that is, like, this really was basketball diplomacy in a weird way. And it wasn't because we were trying to do anything. We were just trying to be ourselves and have an open mind and learn something. But that's what it was like. It's so funny because you guys saw the video. We talked to Jokic for roughly 7.5 seconds, right? Like, it was a very brief interaction. Yeah. And it's like, it didn't matter because that guy brought us together. You know, us together. And then it brought us together to Serbia. And it's like, if you access sports in the right way, there's so many different ways to do it. But one of the ways is that, like, you open yourself up to all the auxiliary things that come with it. And this trip was, like, the ultimate proof of that. And there's a lot of little micro lessons along the way and interesting stories, some to be told. But that, to me, is the moral. Is it's like, if you're just watching sports for sports, you're missing out on what they're actually about.
Yeah, and for me, it's I almost like that we didn't talk to Jokic. Like, you know what I mean? It kind of keeps him as sort of a deity as opposed to just like a guy.
Yeah.
And
he came down from heaven just to, like, touch the.
And it's fun, like, truly, like, and then
he shook with the left hand inverted this way. Like, I couldn't even figure out how to go.
Totally, and it's, you know, it's like. But at the same point in time, it's like it is the reverberations of, like, what he has meant to us, like what he has meant to Serbia, and then on a larger sense, like, then what us feeling connected to something bigger than ourselves, bigger than Denver basketball, which is also a very solitary pursuit. But just the concept that we always get back to, just the impact of the importance of sports, which is it's something that is just so deeply connected to what it is to be a human being. And there's something for everybody in sports should they look to access it. And you can meet people that have seemingly absolutely nothing in common with you from a cultural standpoint, from a socioeconomic standpoint, from an educational standpoint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, there's something just, like, so visceral and so real about watching that Sombor shuffle go in and the feeling that you get. And, like,
that was the best feeling.
And it just makes it feel like, you know, it's like a life is worth living sort of moment. And it's just like, and then the community aspect that is born from that, and just, like, I don't know, the outpouring of love. Like, you know, especially me, like, I work on a computer by myself in the dark a lot, and to see guys wearing T-shirts that I worked on for a really long time in a place that I didn't necessarily know existed when I was growing up. And I don't even know if they know the significance of what it means, but there's something, like, universal about the design language. And I, like, met designers out there that wanted to talk to me about that type of thing. And it's just, the moral of the trip is that we are the same. We are just the same. We're just, human beings are human beings, and there are things that we can relate to if we want to. And it's great to be able to find something that we enjoy that does that for us.
Love it. And my big takeaway is that next time I'm going.
Yep. No doubt.
All right. Appreciate you guys sharing some light on this. Huge thank you to Avaka for making that trip possible. Thanks to everyone in Serbia for taking care of these guys. Glad to have you back, and we'll see you guys soon.